Hello, my name is Daniel Hawkins, and I'm a second-year MBA candidate and Centre for Digital Strategies MBA Fellow at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. I'm pleased to welcome Mark Lowenstein, a leading industry exec, advisor and commentator. He's Managing Director of Mobile Ecosystem, and most recently, Mark was also a member of the senior leadership team at Verizon Wireless, serving as Vice President of Strategy. Mark is joining us today as part of the Brit Technology Impact Series. Welcome to Tuck, Mark, and thanks for being here. So another theme of the mobile ecosystem, the current sort of battles at the moment, is the contest between the different mobile operating systems, the different platforms. And I wonder, how do you see that playing out?
Well, we're seeing this growth in operating systems, and I think ultimately we're going to see a contraction. So, right now there's a huge battle going on between the emerging Android ecosystem, Apple, of course, and RIM, and then there's a few others sort of as the outliers. There's Symbian. There is the WebOS from Palm, and then there's Microsoft. I personally believe that there's room for only 3 or 4 operating systems ultimately, in part because it's very frustrating for developers. You've got thousands and thousands of developers who have to learn not only different operating systems, or the development platforms are different. Some are more open, some are more closed, some are based on sort of different languages and development tools, but they're also fundamentally different sort of business models and strategies associated with each of those operating systems. BlackBerry and Apple being much more closed, Android being more open, for example. I think at the end of the day, where we will end up is 3 primary operating systems. I think it's going to be dominated by Apple, Google / Android, and BlackBerry, although BlackBerry I think needs another trick. They're going to start to lose share. It's amazing to me that they've held sort of onto the share that as well as they have, but I think they're starting to recognize that. This is a week where they're having actually a major sort of a symposium, their annual sort of customer symposium, and I think they're making some announcements with regards to a new operating system. Palm, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to survive. I think they're just too late to the game. The product development process has been too slow. They're not there with an app store. The one sort of dark horse candidate in all of this is Microsoft, which is coming out with a new operating system for mobile Windows. We're now calling it Windows Phone 7 later this year. And this is sort of their last gasp attempt at mobile. They've had sort of many runs at it. They've been in the 5 to 6, 7% share range for many years. They've been unable to break out, and not a lot of folks are confident that they're going to be able to do it. But they are, rather than sort of going at it from the standpoint of here's the Windows OS, let's try to jam it down onto a mobile phone form factor. Here they're taking more of a ground-up approach, saying, okay, what sort of experience do we need to deliver on mobile? I think they're embracing some of the technology they bought when they bought Danger, some of the new UI elements, and also some of the technology from their gaming platforms and from Zune, and trying to leverage that into mobile and deliver a bit of a mobile experience. Developers who I've talked to are already starting to develop on Windows Phone 7 speak about it very favorably. The question is whether it's a little late to the game. But then again, Microsoft is a company that has significant resources, and they're throwing a lot at this thing, so we'll see.
So you mentioned developers as having an important role in voting with their feet, if you like, with the different systems. Do you think that operators, carriers, people like Verizon have a role in a sort of a casting vote in which platform will win?
Well, certainly they do from the standpoint of their carrying the devices that are based on those OSs. Although some of that is the operator's choice, and in other cases it happens to be in Apple's case it's not Verizon's real choice whether they're carrying the iPhone. So it's sort of who holds the strings of power there. But the operators certainly do, and not only which devices they carry or which OSs they support, but also how much marketing they put into this. Very interesting and contrasting example here was the first Android-based device that Verizon was selling it was the Motorola Droid. They put a $100 million marketing campaign into that device. Huge push in the 4th quarter. Then fast forward a few months to the first Palm WebOS-based device from Palm, the Palm Pre, available on Verizon. Very different level of marketing campaign. Not nearly the sorts of dollars, not nearly the sort of attention. And so there's where an operator can make or break, not from the standpoint of supporting a technology, not from the standpoint of the value that they bring. It's just the sheer force of their marketing dollars. I mean, these are the major operators. The major operators are among the top advertising spenders among all companies. I think, if you look at Verizon or AT&T, for example, they're probably both in the top 10 in terms of total ad spend across media. So they have the ability to sort of make or break devices just from the standpoint of what sort of marketing is put into it.
Definitely, it's very true. Well, just quickly, sort of switching gears. Sure. I know that you've been involved in some really interesting initiatives down in Boston. Mm-hmm. I know you founded the Boston Wireless Brain Trust. Yeah. I heard you speak at an X-Economy event for Massachusetts Mobile Month. Yeah. Yeah. And you've advised the mayor, Thomas Menino, on Boston's wireless strategy as well. So what would you say are Boston's strengths as a hub for mobile?
Well, I'd say one thing that's actually not realized about Boston is that I would say Boston is the number 2 center for mobile in the world. If you look at the number of companies that are mobile companies who are based in Boston, if you look at the amount of venture capital that has been put into companies with a mobile focus, and the number of venture capital firms that have practices either specifically in mobile or that are focused on the broader sort of communications and media landscape, of which mobile is a big part. So I'd say after Silicon Valley, Boston is the number 2 place in the world. It's sort of what I call one of the 5 or 6 sort of wireless epicenters in the world. And people don't realize that about Boston. If you look at several of the major sort of IPOs in the past several years, M&A activity and so on, a lot of that has centered around Boston-based firms. And even within that, there are sort of centers, what I call centers of excellence in Boston, having to do with mobile. So a lot going on with advertising, interestingly enough, because Boston's not a major media center, but there are several mobile advertising firms that are based there. Location services, another sort of mini center of excellence. Speech and voice recognition technology, which is becoming a more important part of mobile applications, based on the largest company there is called Nuance, which has ended up being sort of the roll-up company for a lot of other sort of speech and voice-based technology companies. I think they've bought 30 or 40 companies over the past 10 or so years. And again, they're centered in Boston. So, and then just given all of the educational institutions, MIT and Harvard and all the friendly rival universities to Dartmouth that have vibrant programs in engineering or technology, that's also certainly contributing to the energy around mobile.
So one final question. Obviously here at Tuck we have a lot of different classes that focus on strategy and innovation within ecosystems. What advice would you give to students who are about to sort of join either companies in mobile or in other tech-focused sectors that are operating dynamic ecosystems?
Sure. Well, mobile is certainly going to be a huge opportunity going forward. Mobile companies that are focused on the mobile communications arena are going to be important sources of opportunity and employment and so on. But I don't necessarily think that means that expertise in mobile is all that important. It's more that there are centers of that there's expertise that are being acquired by virtue of what students are doing in the programs here and what they've done prior to even entering business school. That they will bring them. You and I were chatting before we started the interview about some of the work you've done in geography and sort of location technologies and some of the projects you did last summer. I mean, you're bringing in expertise from those fields into companies that are trying to leverage location services for mobile. Students that have expertise, for example, in social networks and social networking, for example, could bring that area of expertise to the mobile sector, which really needs to figure out the mobile component of what social networking is going to be. Another area, again, knowing a little bit more about what you do, about the Center for Digital Strategies here, is the future of applications and the future of sort of content and business models and what it's going to mean for wireless within sort of the larger consumer electronics and digital media landscape. So I don't necessarily view wireless or mobile as on its own island as it has been sort of historically. It's now, again, becoming much more integrated into the broader consumer electronics and digital media landscape, and I think from what I understand about the programs here, the students will have a huge amount to contribute to that.
Well, that's great. That's great advice. It's definitely the focus of the Brit series too.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. So Mark, on behalf of the Centre for Digital Strategies at Tuck, I'd like to thank you again for speaking with us today